Doki Doki Literature Club is a disservice to visual novels. While the height of the game's rapid popularity is over, I don't think it's any less important to dissect why the reception to this game, as well as the product that it actually is, has been a destructive force against the medium, as well as just not a particularly well-told story. Let me preface this for a second by making it clear that Doki Doki is a 4. It's not a 0, it's not the worst story ever conceived, but its stumbles have been largely cast aside in a wave of shock and intrigue surrounding the product, and the reception to this below-average game is honestly pretty gross. Before we start breaking apart this game's weaknesses, let's first dismiss the idea that the story is somehow special for being unique. Quite frankly, the game's largest selling point is how shocking and surprising the narrative is. The story plays with the audience's expectations, built off its aesthetic and presentation, pulling the rug out from the high school rom-com to reveal a darker narrative. Not only has this been done many times in the visual novel medium, all other instances have done it better. 2 of the 4 major studio keyworks, some of the largest and most influential stories in the medium, feature this very twist. Both Little Busters and Rewrite tell a school life story that is revealed later on to be all lies, sheltering a much darker reality. And even then, Rewrite gimps large chunks of its narrative from the Muv-Luv trilogy, which was executing these same plot twists all the way back in 2003. The idea of presenting a high school slice of life as a means of manipulating the audience and priming them for a larger and more serious story isn't tired, but it is done, and done well. That being said, a lack of uniquity doesn't in and of itself make a story bad. Doki Doki suffers from a number of executional flaws that ultimately make its themes muddied and its cast paper thin. Vital to these kinds of stories is the time spent being fooled. That is to say, that initial presentation of the narrative that prefaces the so-called truth. Doki Doki's false reality doesn't accomplish anything aside from tone setting. It's incredibly short, all things considered, which isn't inherently bad. See Gakogurashi, which only features about 18 minutes of false reality, but did so really well, but doesn't actually do much anything with it. Gakogurashi was short, but the intrigue came from seeing in hindsight how the false reality paralleled the true reality. It gave every second of the false reality multiple meanings. Doki Doki is just lulling you into a lie. Compare this to the much more conventional type of false reality, the character acclimating realities seen in Muv-Luv, Little Busters, and Rewrite. These false realities vary in length, Rewrites being about 6 hours while Little Busters could easily take 60. The purpose of these fake realities is to endear the reader to the cast, so that when the true, harsh reality kicks in, the reader has a reason to care about the cast. Little Busters even goes a step further, lacing these many hours of false reality with layers and layers of foreshadowing and double meaning. In Rewrite, by the time the Leaf Dragon attacks the Occult Club, the reader has had enough time to legitimately grow to care for that space and its members the way that Kotaro had. Doki Doki presents archetypical characters with little in the way of depth or development while in this false reality. There are hints of deeper character drama going on, but they are scarce and presented without being pursued until after the false reality is over. The result is characters with too little character to actually care for in an interpersonal way. The one exception to this rule is the character Sayori, who features a slow and gradual descent into depression, confiding in the protagonist before ultimately killing herself. This is easily the best and most well-constructed thing about Doki Doki, but even then, the story later goes on to destroy this moment. Her death marks the end of the false reality, but no one aside from her has any real character or development. Compare this to Muv-Luv, which requires the reader to experience a character arc for every heroine before finally shattering the false reality. The end result is that the reader can actually care for the cast and the new and perilous world being presented as truth. You long for the reality that you've lost right alongside Takeru. Doki Doki wastes its false reality, developing only a single character who would go on to lose that development come the true reality. And let's talk about that true reality. The execution of the true reality is where Doki Doki loses any points it may have earned. In this true reality, the other 3 heroines take the spotlight. However, gone is the finesse of the game's strongest moment. The other heroines shockingly and surprisingly plunge into depression and horror. While these moments succeeded in surprising the reader, they suck out all of the real weight of these issues that made Sayori's gradual fall into depression actually effective. Seeing a girl randomly knife herself repeatedly out of nowhere is not a powerful statement about depression. It's a paper-thin way of shocking the reader. But even then, that's not where the story goes wrong. The actual twist is that Monica has been forcing insanity on these girls out of an extreme jealousy and sense of self-deprecation. So now, not only were the actions of the girls meaninglessly dark, they weren't even their own. The subtle and hard-hitting message about how hard it is to fight depression, told through the descent of Sayuri, is destroyed since she was just forced into depression against her will and without the ability to combat it. The same can be said for all the other girls. In trying to tell its message, that being that the desire to be loved can both save and destroy, it abandons any and all hope of telling any other message, even ones it already established pretty well. And even that message is told poorly. The descent of any heroine besides Monica is undermined since their actions were not their own. And what does that mean? It means that Doki Doki Literature Club is 90% fluff, wasting your time with falsehoods with only the parts about Monica in the true reality actually contributing to the themes and message. And even then, the game's subtext makes the reader question if Monica's actions are even her own, a case that would then invalidate the entire story, with no one having agency and therefore no one having responsibility. Compare this to the true reality of Little Busters, which pulls back the curtain to reveal that the school world you know was actually a purgatory, perpetually stuck in a Groundhog Day time loop. In addition to just being shocking like Doki Doki, it recontextualizes the actions of the heroines in the false reality and adds to the themes and messages it already conveyed by making a powerful statement about how we all must remember to be happy in the finite time we have left on this earth. Both realities work together with the cast to tell a story with a clear message and a group of characters that are developed and realized. Doki Doki shocks you with its presentation and spooky tone, but take a closer look behind the superficial presentation and you'll see a contradictory thematic framework told with paper-thin characters in a sloppy and wasteful way. The idea is old and been told many times in better stories. Meanwhile, the story it does tell meanders and wastes time without knowing where it wants to go. The fact that this is what's become the modern face of visual novels is appalling. Not because Doki Doki is the worst story ever, but because we all crave mediocrity too much to say otherwise. Telling a story in a more unconventional way is meaningless if at its core the story being told is poor. We live in a wonderful age in which anyone can just go on Steam and find a plethora of great stories they can buy and read. This is a blessing compared to the landscape of visual novels just a few years ago in the Western market. We live in an age of opportunity, yet squander that blessing with flat garbage. If anyone read Doki Doki and had a good time, that's fine. But don't praise it like the second coming of Christ. Take a step back and realize how riddled with problems it is, and have the self-respect to treat yourself to a good story. Heaven knows there's plenty out there. Thank you.